in this situation. But a lot of people are not willing to do that, and they will go hard in the paint to, mob on people for behaving a certain way. But if you look back in their Twitter history, they were behaving the exact same way, if not worse. So I really want to take the time to just call that out, okay? Because this is what we're not going to do. Okay, what we're not going to do is hold people to a standard that we ourselves do not measure up to. So
Good evening. I mean, not good evening, good afternoon, my bad. It ain't evening yet. Wait a little bit before y'all come in here.
For this horrendous attack, let us all come together and condemn Dowd wrote on Blue Sky. Alright, so he was fired for saying that. And Dr. Umar also put out a statement, and I'm trying to wonder what's going on with the school. I don't want to hear you talk about nothing but the school. Okay? Nothing but the school, and that's it. And nothing but why you tried to lie and say your account was froze.
Okay, and that's enough of that. Let's get into this from law and crime.
Breaking news in the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. A person of interest was in custody but then released. That was Kirk, just before an assassin took his life, doing what he had done thousands of times before, talking to college students.
Tap screen, please. Tap screen, please.
I am. Okay, what is her...
I have the details of the arrest that ended up not happening.
Hello.
Welcome to this breaking edition of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. I was going to tell you about an arrest being made in the murder of Charlie Kirk, but that ended up not happening. A person of interest was taken into custody and questioned, but then released. And this is actually the second false start in the case in just a matter of hours. Charlie Kirk was a conservative activist who woke up this morning and traveled to the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem to speak to college students. It was something that Kirk loved to do. He was the founder of Turning Point USA, and he had done this thousands of times before. Take a look. Kirk then took his seat under a tent and started to speak to the students, taking questions. It was 20 minutes into the event, around 12:20 Mountain Time, when someone in the crowd asked a question about gun violence, and at that very moment, the assassin fired. Kirk was hit in the neck. I'm not going to show the video to you. It's horrific.
God, no, please do not show that video.
The father of 2 young children started to bleed out immediately.
Tap screen, please. Please.
Kirk's bodyguards
Please tap the screen.
In the hope of saving his life, and he was taken to the hospital, but nothing could be done. A man was detained, and it appeared a suspect was in custody immediately, but then that person was released. Then later, FBI Director Kash Patel tweeted,
Tap screen,
the subject
please.
for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Thank you to the local and state authorities in Utah for your partnership with the FBI. We will provide updates when able. But guess what? Patel's information did not pan out. Patel later tweeted, the subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in interest of transparency. So the search for the shooter continues. Charlie Kirk leaves behind a wife, Erica, and 2 young children. Earlier this year, Erica Kirk posted a video on TikTok thanking Charlie for, quote, being my love story. To discuss this just horrific turn of events, I would like to bring in Bob McEwen. He is a friend of Charlie Kirk's, and he is also a former congressman from the state of Ohio and a board member USA. Bob, first and foremost, my condolences go out to you and everybody at Turning Point, Charlie Kirk's family. How are you doing upon hearing of this news that he's been assassinated? He was murdered.
That's exactly correct. He really was. He gave his life. He impacted the nation more than anyone his age ever. He's like the president. There's no two of them. And it's hard to grasp where we are. He was winsome. He spoke truth. He had nothing to fear. He would just go on a college campus and sit in a chair and just share truth about life, liberty, the right to pursue happiness, and a firm commitment to his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He was uncompromising, which then knew that the haters were... He was uncompromising, which then knew that the haters would come after him. He had security, but we hoped that this day would never come. And certainly for Erica and the children, I know how upset and distressed I am just to think how they must feel. It's a horrible few hours that we've endured.
You said that he had security, which, obviously was a good thing, but were there ever threats that he had received? Was he concerned about his safety, especially after what happened with President Trump and Butler, during the campaign? He's sitting out in these
tap screen, please. Please tap screen.
You're receiving threats.
Tap screen.
The thing is that truth overcomes error, and error cannot tolerate truth. Error can speak with error, and they can just go and have white papers and discussions and conferences. But once truth enters the room, they all turn on the truth. They have to only the left burns books, and only the left censors. And so he knew that his life was under threat on a regular basis, just really daily. And we've talked about it. He could never take his children to the grocery store or never walk in the park alone. And Erica,
welcome. Tap screen.
That preserving this, the greatest hope in the history of mankind, the United States of America.
Tap screen, please.
And he was willing to make that sacrifice. But as you can see, it was one bullet, a person prepared to take him out, and that assassin, who obviously was a hater, and he had to silence truth, because when Charlie had people talk about these things and they began to logically think, it made a tremendous change. We've always said that young people, you really didn't need to worry about them until after they got married, after they became parents, and after they got a job, that they would all become conservatives eventually. So just let them talk about socialism and communism and things when they were young. But Charlie didn't believe that. He said, no, let's do it. Let's talk right now. And the shift has taken place that we've never seen, certainly in any of our lifetimes. But the most conservative demographic is 18 to 25. And it's no small responsibility that he did that across the nation and began to stand up after all of the lies that went on about COVID, and you need to stand so many feet apart, and you can't be there for your parents' funerals, and all these things that the young people began to question. Now, what is that? When they questioned, he was there with truth, and truth was winning, and that's why they had to take him out.
Where were you when you heard that he had been shot?
Well, I was at my desk, and I got a call from his chief of staff, and mentioned that he had just been shot, and it was in the neck, and he wasn't sure. They had no more information.
Tap screen.
15 to 20 minutes after that then broke on the news that he had been fired upon. And then we prayed, hopeful that he would survive, because I repeat, and there's no two like him. There's no one to take his place. But nevertheless, so I'm reaching out to the staff. Obviously, lives have been upended. That was the goal. And all we can do is we think about what the president went through, and they made 2 attempts to get at him as well. Of course, we'll see who's responsible for it. Our nation was blessed by his service and his commitment to righteousness, as our John Adams said about our Constitution, was made for causes such hatred that we've experienced it today, unfortunately.
This is clearly a political assassination. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was at an event he had
Tap
hosted
screen, tap
hundreds,
screen,
if not
tap screen,
thousands of
please.
times on college
Please tap
campuses.
screen.
And just somebody laid in wait to take his life. Do you expect federal charges to come of this? I would think possibly there would be, just because of the political nature of this.
I'll be right back, y'all. I gotta cut my hair
We do
on.
have a Department of Justice that's interested in justice, and while that wouldn't be such a critical point in a state like Utah where they have common sense, but in places like New York, or the whole idea that they couldn't incarcerate people in North Carolina is why that stabbing took place. We have the same thing in California, and where you don't incarcerate people, that they have what are called cashless bail. Cashless bail means that there is no bail. It's like, say, when you steal a car, you say
Here you go.
it's a cashless purchase.
Here we
so,
go.
Those people are allowed to
What's your name?
in Utah, I think
Maddie, I have no idea.
Fortunately, we have a Department of Justice under our current president that will make sure that justice is done. And so he's being...
And I got to pause this for you. To answer your question, Maddie, that the shot to Charlie does indeed look like a precision shot. So at this time, I can't answer that question.
prosecuted under federal law, and under federal law there is...
Tap the screen, please. Tap the screen.
You gave the toast at Charlie Kirk's wedding. I mean, you were very close to him. You were, you know.
Welcome.
Kirk's wedding. I mean, you were very close to him. You were, a Turning Point USA board member. I mean, you'd known him for a really long time. I mean, just talk to me about that relationship.
Well, I repeat, there aren't two people like him. He was a full-time learner. He took 2 hours every day to learn. He began his day faithfully with exercise and time in the scriptures. Then he went to an education of, whether it be on Hillsdale or whatever, reading a book for 2 hours every day. And then he ran a massive organization, $100 million, over 1,000 employees just in the last election. A massive. A lot of people, they say they do a lot of things, but he actually did them. And as a result, I remember, as you know, under the last president, there was this effort to incarcerate anybody that was a conservative. We were at dinner one time. My wife asked all the people at the table, had anyone there not had the FBI come knock on their door, and no one. All these are all people that you recognize their names. And I remember when the FBI came to my door, and of course the purpose of do that is because it always costs you 6 figures or more just to respond to them. Not that you've ever done anything. We just want to talk. And I remember when they first came to our door under the last Department of Justice, which was so corrupt. And I remember Charlie said, "Bob, I'm with you. I've got your back." He was an ultimate friend. I thought, here's this little young fellow, younger than my children, and he was just so steady and so strong. And the President of the United States, indeed, an entire nation relied upon him for his strength. And you're seeing the reaction across the country. And the difficulty is that young people, as you know, all of us that went to school, we all know that if you were conservative, you were...
Tap screen.
And that was the case up until just about 18 months ago, or 20 months, when it began to turn. But now you see when he shows up, just 2 years ago, Turning Point, when we would try to book him into a venue, the left-wing universities would make it impossible to speak. And if he was attacked, they wouldn't interfere, they wouldn't protect him when they were shouted down, and all of the things that the left does to truth, because truth overcomes error. And so they have to shout him down, they have to silence them, they have to prevent them, drive people away. But about 18 months ago, all of that began to become so overwhelming that the kids began to show up in such numbers that they weren't able to do that anymore. And as you saw just today, that when the crowd was over 3,000 kids as far as you could see, and the difficulty at that venue was the sound was not strong enough for all of the people that were there.
Like and share the live, please.
Taking place to our country. You see it at religious, spiritually, churches, particularly Catholic churches, but many churches there's a growth. Bible sales this year are up 22% over last year. Young people are turning back to faith and to faith in their country. And he played no small part in that. And if that's doubted at all, I think you can ask any kid on any campus, and they can say, yes, I thought I was alone a couple years ago. Now I see, because of what Charlie said and did, I can see that I wasn't alone. People began to show up. And that's what's so encouraging about America. Is so excited. I'm more positive about our country I've ever been in my life. And that's why the haters are just so frightened, because they see America being restored to its roots. And he gave his life for that cause.
Bob, you had mentioned earlier Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica, just a beautiful woman. He has these beautiful children. I just can't even imagine what she is going through tonight.
Well, she is an exceptional woman. They've made great efforts to reach the young people. My two granddaughters just went to the
at Rhea_Ray facts. Just because we don't agree with one another, don't mean that it gives you the green light to take a life in any way, shape, or form.
Efforts in July in Texas, in which young, successful females got up and talked about purity before marriage, and the privileges of being a wife and mother, and having children, and all the things that bring genuine happiness, which of course the left diminishes. And I think about Erica. She was bright and talented, and when she was being interviewed for a job at Turning Point, it was a very beneficial circumstance for Charlie, because it was a high position, and they went out and for over 2 hours he asked basic questions. How do you stand on this, and how do you feel about that? And at the very end, she said, well, what do you think? And he said, let me tell you, I'm not going to hire you, but with your permission, I would like to date you.
Thank you for following.
She went back, and her girlfriends and her mother and everything said, how'd it go? And she scratched her. She said, I don't know. But they felt very, very deeply in love. They're just two wonderfully, exceptionally mature people, American citizens. She's a daily communicant to her church. And it's a tragedy that we must remember. Remember her in prayer and uphold her to have these babies and now to be alone.
I can't even imagine, and my heart goes out to her. I don't care what your politics are. This is a tragedy, and it's horrible. It should not have happened. Bob McEwen, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for caring.
And here we go.
Enrolling in Arizona Online.
I got something else for y'all. Hold on.
It's a wonderful university with several reputable programs.
The FBI has just released this photo of a person of interest in connection with the horrific killing of Charlie Kirk from yesterday. And this comes as they provided new updates and evidence today as they race to find this assassin. The conservative influencer was in the middle of debating a member of the public during an outdoor event at Utah Valley University when
tap the screen, please.
Chaos.
Please tap the screen.
A shot that has been heard around the world. We are going to break down what we just heard with former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Charlie Kirk, co-founder of Turning Point USA, a stalwart friend to some of the most well-positioned people in our government, and yes, a controversial online presence with millions of followers, is dead at the age of 31. This is a dark day for our country. I talked about this on social media yesterday. I'm going to say it again. We cover some of the worst evils in this country almost daily, and I was still sickened and shocked and disgusted by what I saw yesterday. And I just tell everybody out there, please think about and pray for Charlie Kirk's family and friends, because they are now left with the new reality of pain and loss and confusion that victims' family members deal with every day in this country. This married father of two, he is credited with rallying young Republican voters during the 2024 presidential election. He had this famous debate-style events at colleges around the country, drawing praise from some, criticism from others, and this was his final one. It was during one of those college events on Wednesday that Kirk was shot and killed. And again, we are about to get into what the FBI just said, but it appears, based on their comments, that this may be a lone gunman.
The inconvenient truth. I really can't say that. Only thing I'm going on is by what can be proven. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Lone gunman who was atop a roof near the heart of Utah Valley University's campus in Orem. And we are learning, again, new details about that shooter right now from public safety officials and the FBI. We're going to show you the brand new press footage, and I'm going to be bringing on former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walter to break down what these new developments mean, the potential evidence, how they're going to analyze it. Are we closer to actually catching the suspected shooter? We'll talk about it, but here's what we know. You had event goers who were lined up in an outdoor area to ask this conservative activist questions about things like gun violence and gender identity. And
tap screen, please. Please tap the screen.
Moving over a microphone at the quad. There's a lot of political excitement there. But again, controversial figure. And the New York Times reports that 40,000 people turned out to see Kirk speak as he started another round of college tours. This one was called the American Comeback. Now, Kirk was seated underneath a canopy. He was surrounded by these metal barricades with his own personal security nearby. We can have a separate conversation, and maybe we will, about potentially the lack of security. But as seen in videos that were posted to social media, a member of the public standing just a few feet away
screen, please.
was questioning Kirk about recent gun violence in America.
So, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years? Too many. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Counting or not counting gang violence?
And at that moment, there was the sound of a single gunshot, and Charlie Kirk fell. If you've seen the videos online, they are awful.
They
If
are.
you've seen this video, it was taken by people in the crowd. It shows the moment that a bullet literally tore through Kirk's neck, sending him sprawling to the ground. It is horrific. He was carried to a nearby vehicle. He was rushed to the hospital. It was only a few miles away, but he was pronounced dead. And Utah officials would later say that they believe that this was a targeted attack, one bullet, one victim. Now, people at the event, they scattered in all directions. They were screaming. They were falling over another. They were falling over one another. They were trying to figure out where the shots were coming from, and if more bullets would be fired.
I imagine it was a very chaotic scene.
Campus building, the Losi Center. It's about 150 to 200 yards away from the gathering on the quad. And an unverified video that was posted to social media, it appears to show a person laying down on top of the building. Now, law enforcement has not confirmed this video, nor have they said this figure on the roof is the shooter. But let's talk about what they did say, okay? This is new. So Utah's Commissioner of Public Safety and the FBI Special Agent in charge of the investigation provided brand new updates Thursday morning.
Tap screen, please. Please tap screen.
Buying the right equipment for your shop is an important investment. Elite Metal Tools has the
gunman, and that is what we want to talk about right now. So, what have they learned about him so far? How was he able to get away? Take a look.
Through all that work last night, we were able to make a few breakthroughs. We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at
tap screen, please. Tap screen, please.
Arrived on campus.
Thank you.
Campus. We've tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location.
What you're listening to at Mother.Dester. This is Law and Crime, giving their information on the unaliving of Charlie Kirk.
After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus into an Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads.
Tap screen, please.
This individual, we are not going to release that at this time. We're working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media, and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we're confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately.
And the FBI also revealed they found the suspected murder weapon.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. This is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. So the FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation.
Also, this is just coming out from the Wall Street Journal. They're reporting that the ammunition that was used by Charlie Kirk's killer, it may have been engraved with transgender and anti-fascist ideology. If that is true, that makes a potential motivation for this killing a lot more clear, but we will see. We'll get more updates on that. Now, while officials aren't releasing very many details about the shooter's identity, they implied that he was able to blend in with a crowd on a college campus.
So what I'll release about the suspect is the suspect blended in well with a college institution. We're not releasing many details right now, and we will soon. But right now we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age.
I'll be right back, y'all. Restroom break.
Very, very interesting. And the Public Safety Commissioner also pointed out right, for American history, September 11th, and how law enforcement is once again coming together with one goal.
Historically, on 9/11, law enforcement has come together as a group to recognize and honor those that sacrificed to preserve the ideals of this country, the freedoms of this country. And instead, we find ourselves today letting a murderer who chose to violate our rights, the rights of an individual within this country.
Now, again, I'm going to bring on Tracy. We're going to talk about what all this means. But the FBI and other agencies, they are actively working to try to track down this shooter. But there is misinformation, there is misidentification, it has run rampant so far. And just minutes after the shooting, there were details that started circulating online about an arrest. There were images on social media showing an older man being hauled away by multiple people. And soon officials would put out a statement saying that this man was not the shooter. He was arrested. He was arrested for obstruction, but he's not the shooter. And then hours later, FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the subject of the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. But not long after that, the director kind of clarified, saying the subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release.
Okay, I'm back. Tap screen, please. Please tap screen.
Those people do not deserve to be targeted in person or online.
Yesterday, during the investigative process, we located a couple of persons of interest.
See if they turn up.
Those individuals. And after releasing them and after clearing them of being suspects, they faced scrutiny, they faced threats. We asked the public to be patient with the investigative process. These individuals were not suspects, they were people of interest. We ask that you do not impose those people in that investigative process. They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that.
That does make you wonder, is that why they are not releasing video of the suspected shooter? We're going to talk about that. memorials that have sprung up on campus, and some people gathered at the state capitol in Salt Lake City to remember Charlie Kirk. Others paid tribute at Turning Point USA's headquarters out in Arizona. President Donald Trump was one of the first people to confirm that Kirk had indeed died, spoke from the Oval Office Wednesday night.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth.
Tap screen, please.
Moment for America.
Please tap screen.
Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever. To share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
By the way, the president just announced that he is giving Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom posthumously. Tributes have also poured in on social media. Political advisor Stephen Miller posted on X, "Our hearts are shattered. America has lost one of its greatest champions. A loving family has lost the most extraordinary husband and father. All of us must now dedicate ourselves to defeating the evil that stole Charlie from this world." Again, FBI Director Kash Patel, who's close with Kirk, wrote on his personal X account, "Rest in peace, my friend. Conservative titan Charlie Kirk. I am praying for Charlie and his family. His passion for American and fearless leadership inspired millions, and his impact will live on in this movement for generations." Former President Barack Obama posted on X.
Thank you.
A motivated person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk. This kind of despicable violence has no place in our democracy. Michelle and I will be praying for Charlie's family tonight, especially his wife Erica and their 2 young children. And as people were fleeing the school, armed law enforcement officers, they were pouring in. They were going from building to building to help escort people to safety. And just before 9 p.m. Eastern Time, school officials gave the all clear, saying there's no ongoing threat to the campus. Utah Valley University announced that classes were canceled, but the school will be closed until at least Monday. You know we've been on top of the story from the very, very beginning, and we're able to do that, by the way, because of our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they're so big? Because they win a lot. They have recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. Think about that. In the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. You have another client in Pennsylvania who received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan, they make it so simple. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at
I wish I could skip that.
By clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. Okay, so I want to break down what all of this means. This presser just ended, and we're bringing on right now former CIA and FBI agent, friend of the show, Tracy Walder. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So let's just talk about what we heard here from this presser. They were able to track the movements of the shooter.
Tap screen, please. Please tap screen.
Tracking movements through the stairwell to the roof. They find the shooting location, saying the shooter jumped off the building after the shooting, fled into the neighborhood, that they start canvassing the neighborhood, looking for doorbell footage, contacting anyone that has footage. They have confirmed they have video footage of the shooter, but they are not going to release it, and they are working on ways to ID this person. Before we go any further into the revelations from this press conference, let's start there. What do you think of that police work, and what can we glean from that?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Obviously, it's relatively quick police work, in my opinion. I said yesterday that this was going to be a bit of a cumbersome process. In a way, and I don't mean this in a bad way, you have too much digital evidence. You have 3,000 college students, not all, but you have 3,000 college students who all have phones, all have videos. You have CCTV probably all over the school. That takes a long time to go through. So what that tells me is it was probably all hands on deck, obviously most of yesterday, and then into today to review that footage. Also, what's interesting to me is it sounds, just if he arrived at campus, or the shooter arrived at campus at 11:52, as they said in the press conference, that this person was actually not laying in wait all that long. I mean, they were laying in wait a bit, but we're not talking hours or anything that. And so this is someone that knew, obviously, what was going to take place on the campus that day, knew, in my opinion, probably studied Charlie, how he spoke, how long he answered questions for, and was really prepared in what they were doing.
But also knew where Charlie was going to be positioned and knew exactly where to go. Like the idea of that roof, 200 yards away, set up a position, that was planned. That's what's eerie about it. It doesn't, I mean, again, we're just trying to take it piece by piece here, but it doesn't seem that someone showed up and tried to figure out where's the best place to go. This feels very quick and very coordinated and very planned.
Oh yeah, there's no question. I said that yesterday actually on News Nation, that I think this took quite a bit of planning, in my opinion, because the reality is I think they knew where the event would take place simply because it had been promoted beforehand, and they probably knew that would be that, I guess, what they're calling fishbowl gathering place. So kind of think Las Vegas mass shooting, that also was sort of a fishbowl situation, if you will. And they knew that he would probably be covered a bit with that pop-up tent. That's what he does tend to do in those outside settings, if you will. I believe this is a person that I do think, if they go back, had been on campus before, in my opinion, and had probably scoped out some of the buildings that they felt would be the best and the most opportune to take that shot.
I'll get to this weapon that apparently they recovered in a second, but what's the technology? What is the ways?
Tap screen, please.
Potential shooter.
Please, tap screen.
So there's a couple ways. There's obviously facial recognition technology. Now, I don't know how good it is with CCTV or with the Ring doorbell cameras. Right? I am not sure.
Thank you for following.
The picture they have of this individual. But one thing you also can do, and they actually did this with Mangio, was menstruate this individual. So how tall are they? Approximately how much do they weigh? You can actually glean all of that information from video footage, even CCTV video footage, which isn't good.
Okay, let's talk about this weapon. They announced they recovered a weapon, a bolt-action rifle, found in a wooded area where this alleged shooter had escaped. The FBI announced they are analyzing this weapon. A, are you surprised that seems to be the weapon, the suspected murder weapon here, a bolt-action rifle, based upon what we saw and what we heard yesterday? B, the fact of where it was recovered and why it was ultimately discarded. And C, how do they analyze the weapon?
So I'm actually not surprised that it was found. That would be the first thing, quite frankly, that someone in a situation like this would do. A bolt-action rifle isn't something that you're obviously going to be able to conceal and run around with, right? Anyone would be sort of picking you off if they saw that. I'm not surprised. I said initially, based on the sound, that this was probably a rifle of some sort. I didn't even need to see it to hear that. It was pretty clear, in my opinion, what kind of weapon this was. I'm not at all surprised it was discarded. I don't know how much evidence they're really going to get off of it. Again, as we talked about before, this person was very prepared. I feel they probably had gloves on in some way, shape, or form, probably had a hat on, any hair was out of the way. So I'll be surprised if it's fruitful in terms of identifying the individual, but obviously would be used later at a trial or something like that.
So, in other words, you are hesitant to say they might be able to recover fingerprints from the weapon. However, can they find out where it was registered to? Can they find out who purchased it?
Sure. Obviously, all of that is in play, of course. I I'm just being honest, I would be very surprised if someone, we talked about this kind of planned nature, right? Scoping out the school, the situation, all of those things, would use a weapon that was registered
Touchscreen,
to
touchscreen,
them, or
touchscreen,
didn't have the
touchscreen.
serial number already removed. Now, again, it's great when criminals make mistakes, so maybe that is on there, but I would have thought that that would have been one of the first things they would have done, was either remove the serial number or use a weapon that was stolen and not registered.
The bolt-action rifle is that tough to fire? If we're talking about firing it from a roof about 200 yards away, shooting Charlie Kirk in the neck, is that a tough shot? Are you saying there has to be a level of training, or what should we be thinking about in terms of this weapon?
Yeah, I've been asked that question actually a lot. I think we want to think that this is some kind of a trained assassin. You know, maybe we see that in movies, and that's something that we want to see. But the reality is a 200-yard shot, which is about what this is. Again, I don't have the exact data, but a 200-yard shot. I believe he was probably aiming for the head, came in a little bit low, but again, I don't know for sure. This is
Thank you, Mama Red, for following.
There's no question. I don't think if you've never held a weapon before, you would be able to do that. But this is someone that probably had a scope attached, had been sitting there for a few minutes, got the target in their sights, and got off.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you to the 3 new followers. Thank you.
Kind of a trained assassin. Now, if you were talking about 600 yards or more, sure, but I don't feel that that's far enough for this to be some kind of a sharpshooter.
Is a bolt-action rifle common? Do a lot of people own these?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, again, it depends on the area, right? I think if you're living in the middle of New York City, right, or Los Angeles, no, but this is Orem, Utah. There is wilderness. There are hunters. There are, right, there is a culture surrounding guns. I live in Texas. People have these. So I think it just depends, to be completely honest.
On where they live. Please.
Okay,
please
they also indicated that they've recovered a footwear impression, a palm print, a forearm printer impression. How do they recover that? What do they do with that information? How do they ultimately process that to determine the identity of those people, of that person?
So the footprint is going to be very similar to what we saw in the Brian Kochberger, Idaho case. Obviously, they're going to photograph it. They may even cast it, right, to get an actual impression of that footprint and save it. Then once the problem is let's just say it's a Nike footprint. There are millions of people that own Nikes, and so that's going to be something that might not help them immediately identify the individual, but may help them actually convict this individual if they find them and find that exact shooter. So that's going to be good for evidence later in terms of obtaining a conviction. Now, a palm print obviously is not the same as a fingerprint, right? It's not as, there may not be a database registered for that, but what they may be able to recover
tap screen, please.
We know how great genealogical DNA has been in terms of identifying someone. So if this is not someone in the system, they may be able to do that with palm print.
And when they say that this is a person who blended in well with the college institution, what does that tell you?
I mean, what that tells me, I believe, and I said this yesterday, that this person had every intention of using the college's cover for themselves. I mean, full stop. So what that tells me is this is someone who at least looks like they belong on a college campus. So we're talking 18 to maybe later 20s. May not be, but looks that way. Someone who really wouldn't draw necessarily attention to themselves, doesn't stick out in this situation. So if someone saw this person walking to this building, if you will. We also have to think about the fact that there could have been a change of clothes. Afterwards, they said they saw someone in all black clothing, running away from that rooftop. This could have been someone who came to the college in, I guess, plain clothes, not all black necessarily, and then changed out afterwards to disguise themselves more. So I think this is someone who definitely looked like they belonged there.
Thank you.
If I remember correctly from the press conference, they said they got, 130 tips? It's a lot. How do they sort through it to determine what's credible?
You know, I don't mean to sound rude, it's a lot, but it's actually not as many as I thought, if you want me to be completely honest with you, Jesse. I actually thought that we would have thousands, simply because of the sheer volume, right, of how many students were there. Then you have a neighborhood, right, with Ring doorbell cameras, all of the things. You also have a public in this area who is probably on high alert and wants to help. And so I actually thought we would be in the thousands, if you want me to be fully transparent. I'm not saying 130 is low. That's good. That's a great place to start. I'm just
tap screen, y'all. Please continue tap screen.
the shooter hasn't been caught. I mean, this was a very public area. There wasn't a ton of security, right? They talk about maybe the lack of law enforcement, but they were quick on the scene after the shooting. 3,000 people there, everybody had cameras. Are you surprised that the suspected shooter was not caught yet?
Yeah, that's a touchy subject because yesterday I actually said on the news when they said they had caught someone, and I think it was sort of an older white male that they had on the ground. I actually said I do not believe that this is the shooter. I believe it is too quick to capture him, and I believe the shot came from the roof, and everyone piled on me for that. And so I am actually not surprised that they haven't caught this individual. I think that this was highly planned. This person absolutely had an egress route, and if the shot did come from the roof, it's not going to be someone who was able to be caught immediately on the ground exiting the scene.
And I wanted your explanation about what happened yesterday. There were reports about individuals who were detained. They were let go. FBI Director Kash Patel
tap screen, please.
Was in custody but released after interrogation. I think there was a lot of confusion, particularly online, about where the day was going to end. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. This isn't like political in any way. I would say this about any FBI director. I do not believe that they should be putting on social media until they know for certain that this is absolutely the individual, because it does create confusion around the public. And then what happens is people let their guards down, and you may miss other tips, legitimate tips of individuals who really did perpetrate this. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I understand the need to want to arrest someone who did this.
When you think about how the shooting happened,
tap screen, please.
Charlie Kirk was talking about
tap screen.
The last word that he said before he was shot was violence. You see him get shot. Do you think this is a situation where it was one person acting alone? Or do you think it was coordinated and there was some help? I mean, we don't know at this point. I've seen a lot of people talking online about what may or may not have happened. From your perspective, we talked about how it might have been planned. Would you suspect that there could be multiple people involved?
So I think so, but not in the sense that you may think, Jesse. So what I actually think is there are these they're from Telegram sub-channels, those kinds of things on social media, where individuals talk about this kind of thing and talk about this kind of violence. So I 100% think that there were individuals in this chat room assisting this person, goading this person on, wanting them to
most
do it,
likely.
That absolutely exists in this internet subculture. So that's where I think these accomplices
tap screen, please. Please tap screen.
All the videos, all the participants. Does the FBI, does local law enforcement, do they try to interview all these people? Do they try to get all this footage? What happens?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because like we said before, this is what, 3,000-ish students, and it's real difficult to confiscate all of their cell phones, especially ones that ran away, right? So my guess is what they're going to do is anyone they came into contact with, they probably took their phones or asked for their phones. Then also any video that they're seeing being leaked online, shared on social media, they're going to find that, and they're going to find the person who did that, not in a bad way, but they want that video. And so I think those are the things that...
Allegedly, according to KSL News Utah, Vice President J.D. Vance lands in Utah to pay respects to Charlie Kirk.
They're probably doing right now and yesterday.
Tracy, before I let you go, before you have to jump back to News Nation and go, and you're such a brilliant voice on this. Do you have confidence that the shooter is going to be caught within the next few days?
Oh gosh. I would like to hope so. My only concern is that this person has quite a bit of hours of a head start. There is an airport only 45 minutes away. If we don't have a name on that individual, they actually could be out of the U.S. By this point, and that becomes complicated. So I'd say my confidence is probably 60-65%.
Tracy, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, literally, this press conference happened 5 minutes. It ended 5 minutes before you came on. Always appreciate your insight. You can check Tracy out online on News Nation. She's a contributor there. Really, thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jesse. I really appreciate it.
That is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube.
Okay, and that's it for that. We're getting ready to go to KSL News Utah. Let's go.
I am now like 3 months postpartum and still trying to navigate all the emotions and everything that comes with it. And
Generation that politicians are just older. They don't feel that connection. They feel like there's a gap missing there between some of the senior politicians and then, young adults coming up through college. But Charlie Kirk was very good at that, very good at having those campus debates, very good at having those meetings and connecting with that young crowd. It's why yesterday when we were interviewing students, and not even students at UVU, but young people who were just coming to UVU to be a part of that debate, to hear that debate, whether they agreed with Charlie Kirk or not, a lot of people wanted to come to just hear what he had to say. You didn't have to believe in what Charlie Kirk was speaking about, but you could believe in the message to at least having open minds and expanding your thoughts and expanding your minds to hear different ideas, different policies, different thoughts about things. And one thing
I'm gonna try my best to be here till 5 o'clock Eastern.
And that's it, or one way right and that's it. Maybe if you started hearing
Tap screen, please. Please tap screen.
Maybe you would come around to that understanding, and that's something that a lot of students said that Charlie Kirk provided, that he shared, that he broadened their minds with something like that. And I think that's something that J.D. Vance connected with, because Vance, younger himself, as political, people go, especially on his level.
Tap screen, please.
So you saw
please tap screen.
About what a tragedy this is and what a dark day this is, and how much Charlie Kirk meant to the country, especially with those that believed in everything Charlie Kirk had to say. So this here today at Salt Lake City is just another sign of how much the current administration loved Charlie Kirk and loved what he had to say. And sending the vice president here on a day like 9/11, where so many thoughts could be elsewhere, and so many thoughts should be elsewhere, of course, with the anniversary of 9/11, the terrorist attacks in New York and D.C. and in Pennsylvania, the tragedies of the airplanes. The administration thought enough of Charlie Kirk that on this particular day, the Vice President of the United States would come here to pick up the body, to meet with the family and friends, and to then take them down to Phoenix, Arizona, where they are from. That says a lot about this relationship between Charlie Kirk and this administration, Ashley.
Yeah, no doubt. And you touched on this, Alex. It is surreal to, see Air Force 2 touchdown on the ground here in our great state and not be celebrating it. This isn't something we wanted. This isn't something that we want our state to be known for. And it is.
You know what? It's probably going to take J.D. Vance a little bit to get to the school or hospital. So I'm just gonna end this and come back. I'm gonna end this and come back. I hope you guys enjoyed the little bit of information I gave y'all. If you're not following me, follow me. And with that being said, I will see y'all later. Wait a minute, hold on, not quite yet. Hold on. I was getting ready to end it. Hold on, y'all.
To preliminary information that was shared with law enforcement agencies. Also, a spent cartridge was still chambered, and 3 unspent containing words on them expressing what law enforcement officials described as transgender.
And this here is ABC News.
It's unclear right now what those markings mean. Authorities are still investigating at this hour. I want to bring in ABC News' Jacqueline Lee. She has the latest for us.
The FBI releasing these pictures today of someone they are calling a person of interest in connection.
Tap screen, please. Please, tap screen,
shooter still at large. Authorities saying today they've been able to track the movements of the suspected shooter on campus through the stairwells and up to a roof, where investigators say they believe the shot came from.
After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled. off of the campus and into a neighborhood.
Authorities recovered a high-powered bolt-action rifle from a wooded area, which they say may have been the gun used in the shooting. And they say they have good footage of the suspect.
Tap screen, tap screen, tap screen.
Appears to be of college.
Please tap screen.
Kirk was shot and killed during an event at Utah Valley University Wednesday.
I was 15 feet away, and it was really hard to witness. As the guy said, shooting or shooters or something like that, you just hear the gunshot, and I'm sorry.
Kirk was a 31-year-old married father of two and founded the conservative advocacy group Turning Point USA and a key player in the Trump campaign. There was controversy over his views on the LGBTQ plus community. Critics also accused him of anti-Semitism, allegations he denied. The president paying tribute today.
I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Both House and Senate minority leaders denouncing political violence.
Political violence in any form against any American is unacceptable.
ABC's Jacqueline Lee is joining me now live in Orem, Utah. Jacqueline,
Okay, I just want to get that little bit out. We don't know if JD Vance is going to speak, but if he does, I will come back. Until then, I'll see y'all later. Peace. Hello. I actually have another Charlie Kirk update. I actually have some other updates I want to do, but I'm not sure if I gonna have time for those tonight. If I don't have time to do those tonight, I can do them tomorrow. Either or, whichever one. Welcome. Tap the screen, please. Tap the screen. Wait a little bit more till y'all get in here. Just wait on y'all. Come on up into the house. Come on in the room. All right. Come on into the room. Come on. All right. Since y'all are here, I'm gonna go ahead and start this out. Hello.
As the race to find the person who gunned down Charlie Kirk intensifies, we are now getting into what happens next. Prosecution, death penalty, legal liability. What are the biggest impacts of this killing? We are going to bring on a major guest to discuss this. One of the best legal minds on TV, CNN senior legal analyst, Ellie Honig. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So let's continue the analysis of the shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, as today, not only did the FBI release a brand new photo of a person of interest in connection with this killing and encouraging those who have information to call 1-800-CALL-FBI. By the way, in a separate post on X, the FBI announced the FBI is offering a reward of up to $100,000.
Thank you for the follow.
For information leading to the identification and arrest of the individual or individuals responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025 at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Contact 1-800-CALL-FBI. And not only that, but the FBI provided more information today in a press conference about the shooter's movements, about palm prints, about the recovered weapon, tips. I encourage everybody to go check out our episode that we just put out today. I interview former CIA and FBI agent Tracy Walder all about that, and has bits, by the way, from that press conference on there too. Really engaging. But the question now, what we want to talk about right now, is if and when they catch this shooter, what happens? Because actually there are a lot of potential impacts and legal impacts that we got to figure out. And I will tell you, it is shocking. It is shocking. What was supposed to be this outdoor public event attended by about 3,000 people where this conservative activist and Turning Point USA co-founder was going to just debate those in attendance, regarding politics and culture and societal views. Instead, it turned into absolute violence. The last word he said before he was shot, he was talking about shootings. How ironic is that? But the last thing he said was violence, and then he gets shot. Now, these horrible events that played out yesterday, it's still, I'm not going to lie to you, it's embedded in my head, especially if you watch those videos. It's probably in yours. Those videos.
Crime period is out of control. What are you talking about?
And by the way, this comes from somebody who covers the evils of this world on a daily basis. I said this on social media yesterday. But just please think about Charlie Kirk's family and friends who now have a new reality that victims, family members, we talk about it in every case that we cover. They now have a new reality. It is a reality of pain, loss, and confusion. Please just think about them. And I say that because you also have to think about the impact that the legal consequences now will have for the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. Right? The trial. At the time of this recording, law enforcement has not caught this shooter. But if and when they do, what happens next? How do you ensure a successful prosecution? What are they doing now? We're talking the death penalty. That's on the table potentially. 2 people were detained yesterday. What about them? Oh, and Utah Valley University? Do they face some questions regarding security? CBS News reporting that according to a university spokeswoman, that single shot through Charlie Kirk's neck that ended up killing him, that was fired from a nearby building 200 yards away. We heard from the FBI, who said that the shooter went to that roof. This is a building that houses student support services and resources. How was he able to get up there? I say all that, but now I want to bring on an incredibly special guest to Sidebar, somebody who hasn't been on here before. I'm going to talk to him about the potential legal consequences, the impact here. We are joined by who I will say, in my opinion, is arguably one of the best legal analysts in our business. One of the best I've ever seen. CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, who previously, by the way, worked for 14 years as a federal and state prosecutor. And most importantly, the reason we were able to get Ellie on here today is because he is the author of an incredible new book. He gave me an early copy. Do I feel special? Yes, I feel special. It is called, let's start it right now, When You Come at the King, Inside DOJ's Pursuit of the President.
Only thing I'm going to put here, y'all, is the facts. Is on what can be proven. Anything that can be proven is facts. And that's all I'm putting out is anything that is actual factual. I am not putting no fabrications up or anything of the sort.
From Nixon to Trump, and Ellie Honig joins me right here. Ellie, so good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that very kind introduction. You and I, by the way, share the distinction of both being Dan Abrams fill-ins, right? When on Sirius XM, and I will get calls sometimes where they'll go, Jesse, it's so great when you fill in. I go, well, close enough, but that's the other guy.
You don't just say thank you.
Sometimes I just roll with it. I don't even respond. I'll take it. But thank you for that. By the way, we'll talk more about Charlie Kirk's scenario, but I totally feel the same way as you. I'm physically disgusted by what happened. And you're right that you have to think about the victims. I mean, I've prosecuted murder cases. I've seen scenes. I've seen autopsies, you name it. And it's deeply traumatizing, and I wish people would respect that.
And, you talk about killings all the time. You talk about crimes. To see it, I mean, we don't always get video proof of the killing, right? A lot of times we don't even have the crime scene photos. What we saw yesterday, I am praying that his family never saw it.
I agree.
It was really tough.
You can't stop people from posting it, but the social media sites can take it down.
By the way, we've been trying to capture all
tap screen, please.
As possible.
Please tap the screen.
Claude AI and the new product, the No Pro. This is really great for meetings. The No Pro is an AI meeting assistant. It's about the size of a credit card. It's slim, it's portable, and you can perfectly integrate it with your phone. It snaps on right back there. So one of the things that it's great for is brainstorming sessions. When we're planning new episodes or interviews, it picks up voices from up to 16 feet away. It filters out background noise. It can record non-stop for up to 50 hours. But here's the real game changer. It captures absolutely everything, audio, pictures, written notes, highlights, and then the app turns it all into these structured summaries with insights.
This is more updates on Charlie Kirk.
It's like having a second brain. It can draft follow-up emails, pull data reports, help with you brainstorming, all based on the context of your meetings. Plus, NoPro gives you peace of mind. There is a display screen that shows your recording status. It has Apple Find My, it has fast file transfer, and it meets the highest privacy standards, so I feel secure using it for the most sensitive of topics. And if you're like me and you want to make the most of your time, it's time to try Applaud NoPro. Right now, you can get 10% off Applaud's other features, Note and No Pin, with code Jesse. Just click the link below or scan the QR code on screen. We're going to talk about, what kind of evidence that might be in a trial. But first, I have to talk about the book. So I started reading. It's awesome. And I was telling you, I didn't know exactly what it was going to be about. I thought it was only going to be about current investigations. But you discuss everything. So you discuss Watergate, you discuss Bill Clinton and Ken Starr, James Comey and Hillary Clinton, the investigations of Robert Mueller, Jack Smith, John Durham, Robert Hur, David Weiss. You talk about the importance of the special counsel office in general. Why did you write this book? So I love telling the stories, right? I've covered a few of these, right? Since everything from Mueller on, I've covered. And when I started talking to the actual participants, I was a prosecutor, like you said, for 14 years, and it brought me back to that, but so much more, like talking to the actual Watergate prosecutors. What was happening in that office the Sunday morning after the Saturday Night Massacre? Talking to people on both sides of the Clinton-Ken Starr case. Talking to people who were involved in all those recent cases up to and including the Jack Smith case. It brought me back to being a prosecutor, and I love telling those stories because, A, I think they're just entertaining on their own. B, I think maybe I can contribute a little bit to history with new stuff that's in this book. But C, I think it tells us something about ourselves, who we are as a society, as a community, where our laws, where the sort of outer boundaries of our laws are, and how we go about what do we do when you have that intractable problem where you have to investigate the president. Where does it go from here? We have a very intelligent audience who is very interested in how investigations work, what is happening behind the scenes, prosecutorial decisions, the pressures. And so I think it's going to be really interesting for them. There is a section where you talk about why you named the book the way that you did, because of all the pressure and the danger that faces a special counsel who has to go after a president or a senior official. That's something that gets overlooked, I think. So your audience will probably fully be Wire fans of The Wire, and of course I took it from Omar. Great show. Yeah, you come at the king, you best not miss. Of course, it goes back beyond, that sentiment goes way before Omar. That's it, I thought it just came from him. I did, honestly, but I was like, it goes back to philosophers and stuff. But yes, the stakes are so intense in these cases. They're so high, and you see some of the tactics, and people made interesting, I would say, admissions to me. Like, I'll give you an example. The book opens with a scene where Jill Wine-Banks, who is still around and healthy and sharp as a tack, she was 30 years old and the only woman on the Watergate team, and she told me, I knew it maybe wasn't the smartest thing, but I felt like I had to do it. She was photocopying key pieces of evidence, not physical evidence, but notes and memos, and bringing them home.
Thank you for the follow. Thank you.
And storing the photocopies in a cardboard box in her home. And the book opens on a scene where her home has just been burglarized. Oh, no. And her first thought is, oh boy. And I'll leave everyone in suspense. Well, that's why we're not supposed to keep it there. Right, but her fear, what she says to me, she goes, look, maybe we might have been at the edge of what we call Rule 6E, like the grand jury secrecy rules. Maybe we even violated it. But we were afraid that Nixon's goons were going to come in and just ransack the office, and we felt like we needed an insurance policy. And by the way, there's a great echo of that. The Mueller team, 40-some years later, started setting up the thing where their files were downloaded to a server off-site, a separate server. Same fear, same concern. So I love that sort of strategy, decisions that these people have to make, and they explain why they did. One of the things I really like about you as a legal analyst is you take these complicated subjects and you break them down, not only for someone to easily understand, but like what matters. What should you take away? And there were parts of your book, and I'm just going to list some of them, where it's like, what do we make of it? No, this is what you're supposed to make of it. So there's something interesting you do is you tell people what they really need to remember. So there was a part in the section that says, the one thing that we most likely to remember about Special Counsel Robert Hur's investigation of Joe Biden was the old man stuff. But the real story was that Biden, then the sitting president, narrowly avoided a recommended criminal indictment. Or you start one chapter where it simply says, Jack Smith never had a chance. Now, what are the misconceptions that you want to clear up about a lot of this? What is like the main point of some of these
Tap screen, please.
Yeah, so I think those are two really
Tap
good
screen.
examples, right? Jack Smith, I've been critical of some of the things he did. I think he did some things really well, but the real point with Jack Smith is the guy never had a chance because Merrick Garland wasted 2+ years until he actually put him in place. And if you do the math, and by the way, I had written and said this beforehand, there was no possible way he was going to be able to get that case indicted and tried before the 2024 election. So for all the talk about is he doing things right or well or poorly, there was never any real chance he was going to get it done. You would know that.
Thank you for tapping the screen.
And on
Thank you.
Joe Biden thing, everyone was hooked, right? Robert Hur wrote in his final report recommending no indictment. He wrote he was an elderly man with, with a compromised memory. And he ended up being right about that. That's one point. But that's the only thing everyone was focused on. I'm reading his report going, but Joe Biden knew he had classified documents. He denied that. And now we know he knew because he's on tape saying all the classified stuff is downstairs.
Thank you.
There's a scenario where Robert Hur could have said, obviously he could not have indicted Joe Biden because Biden was the sitting president, but he could have said, I recommend a criminal indictment of Joe Biden. That would have been, you want to talk about something that would have really created an earthquake, that would have created an earthquake. So, I think, look, I'm part of the media and we tend to focus on certain things, but sometimes what's lying underneath is the real story. Now, for those out there, and I'll tell everybody what I think about the book, but for those out there who say, I'm not really interested in politics, I'm more interested in investigations, I'm more interested in crime, you can't forget, these are actually legitimate crimes that were being investigated, right? Yes. So the people who are interested in that, interested in the true crime aspect, what would you say to them? Right, I mean, this book will take you into the prosecutor's offices. This book takes you into if you want to know how the Watergate prosecutors were thinking about how do we go about pursuing the Nixon tapes, how do we go about interrogating people around Nixon with the additional overlay of politics, you can get that from this book. If you want to get inside the Ken Starr team and the Bill Clinton and the showdown between the two of them, what was it like? I take you inside the room where Bill Clinton is being interrogated on camera for the grand jury, right? It's this famous moment. Oh, yeah. And Clinton's famous line was, it depends on what the meaning of this is. I talked to the prosecutor who asked Bill Clinton that question, and I said, what did you think of that? Oh, he had a great response. He basically said, it was, well, you don't have to tell us. Let me tell you, because this is fun. I won't give away everything in the book, but it was a 4-hour deposition. They'd agreed after much negotiation, and the prosecutor, a guy named Saul Weisman, said, I gotta tell you, he was kicking our ass. He goes, we were 3 hours in. Yeah. We hadn't laid a glove on him. He goes, but the way he said that, it was so smart, being paraphrasing, that if this was a jury trial, I would have turned to, he was former prosecutor, I would have turned to the jury like, this guy? And he goes, that was the only thing anyone was going to remember. But I also talked to Clinton's legal team and what their strategy was and certain tactical surprises that they sprung on Ken Starr. So listen, I grew up in this world of being a prosecutor, making cases and the tactics and the investigation, so that's heavy in here. Where can people buy the book? Can they buy it right now? Anywhere. It is available technically on September 16th, but if you order it today, it'll arrive on September 16th. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, go to your local independent, whatever it may be. I would like a real copy of this, because the manuscript you gave me fell apart. Okay? This is real, though. The glue fell apart. Yeah. That was the early stuff. This is real. This holds together. It's not empty pages. It's strong outside of it. Okay. So whoever can go check it out. When You Come at the King by Ellie Honig. Okay. Now we have to talk about Charlie Kirk. Yes. So you talked to me about it was one of the most graphic, disturbing things you've seen in quite some time. One of the first questions I had was, are prosecutors
Tap screen, please.
Yes. How does that
please
work?
tap
Imagine like the Utah County Attorney's Office, maybe the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office. What are they doing right now? So, first of all, yes, prosecutors are involved in this, and I'm sure both the state-level prosecutors in Utah and the feds are. The reason I say this is because there's been no arrest at the time. Right. But so you say, well, why would a prosecutor be involved? A couple things. You have to work with FBI agents on strategy. I mean, look, my way, I work with FBI agents every day, and my approach was always, you are the point person on the investigation, I'm the point person in the court, but we need to consult both ways. And so, an FBI agent may say to you, let's say hypothetically they find a car. What do we do? Do we need a warrant? Can we just get in there? Is there some exception to the warrant? Either way, you're going to need to be consulted and brought in. You need subpoenas. We'd have to subpoena the phone company, the cell site, the whatever. You have to, that comes from the prosecutor. And you want to be involved because you want to make sure they're not making any mistakes when it comes to Miranda, for example, reading the person their rights, right? What we have is, well, he's talking, but he said something about a lawyer, but now he's in the back of the car. Can we keep talking to there's all these things that you would definitely need to be consulted with a prosecutor on.
Are the attorneys on scene? Like, are they at the crime scene? If there's someone's brought in, are they coming in now to do maybe potentially part of the interrogation?
You could be, yeah. I mean, look, if they have someone and they're holding them offsite, you could definitely be brought there and drive there. But this is an interesting sort of federal-state split. The feds, generally speaking, when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was like, you don't go to the crime scene. That's amateur.
But wouldn't this be both a hold on? But wouldn't this both be a state and federal case, in a sense, or is it just a straight state case? Cause I'm a little confused about that.
State prosecutors tend more to go to the scene.
Thank you.
There's a good debate about whether that's smart or not.
Tap screen. Tap screen. Tap screen. Tap screen.
Come on out. Like, I would be there in a second.
Right. So let's say there's an arrest. Yeah. Okay. What happens next from the state level? What do you expect in terms of charges, processing, the criminal process?
So I expect he will be charged both in the state of Utah and federally. Now,
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. Ordinarily, federal policy, written policy says...
Because ATF should be on this case.
A federal case or something says if the state authorities already charged something, we generally, not always, but generally don't pile on with our own charges. Here, I think the interest is so high, the public interest, that given the things we've heard from DOJ and from the president, I fully expect to see both. Obviously, there will be murder charges. In the state of Utah, it's actually interesting. So it will be first degree, obviously premeditated. There's no self-defense. There's no heat of the moment type thing. But in order to get it up to the death penalty eligible level, you need an aggravating factor. And I was looking at those aggravating factors just yesterday. The one that I think probably applies most, but a lot of it doesn't apply.
Tap screen, please. Tap screen.
Killing somebody who put other
Thank you.
grave risk. And I think they'll argue anytime you fire a rifle into a crowd, you can hit more than one person. Bullet fragments can explode. So I think they're going to use that to get it that bump up to aggravated and make it death eligible.
Mangione doing the same thing. Those prosecutors said the same thing, even though it was directly shot at Brian Thompson. There was that nearby witness.
Right.
They said anytime you fire a weapon, there could be ricochet.
Right.
So I agree. I think that's probably what they'll do for aggravating. And the reason we talk about it is because Utah's Republican Governor Spencer Cox said at a press conference, we still have the death penalty. And by the way, if they do that, how does that complicate the case if it becomes a death penalty eligible case?
So you have to go through a second layer. Well, let me talk state, then I'll talk federal.
Sure.
You always have to have a separate trial proceeding. So it's the only place where the jury actually sets the sentence in our system. So first, the jury will decide guilt or non-guilt. Let's assume they find you guilty. Then you would keep the same jury. Now we go into the penalty phase. And then it gets into aggravating circumstances, mitigating circumstances. Did he have a mental health condition? How premeditated, how gruesome was the act? And then the jury will decide yes or no on death or life in prison. So that's in the but it also makes it longer. It certainly makes it longer. You know what one thing it does though? Certainly in the federal system, it gives you what we call a death qualified jury, and this is an advantage for the prosecution. Defense lawyers hate this because think about it. And again, the same thing in the federal system. You would have to try him, get a guilty verdict, and then go into penalty phase. But when you're picking your jury, you have to ask them, are you capable of recommending the death sentence on a fellow human? And if the person says, no, I just don't think there's any circumstance I can do that, they're out. So think about what that does to your jury pool. If you're a prosecutor, great. I only have people who say they're willing and able to impose the death penalty. Defense lawyers hate it because they go, you're throwing out my best jurors. My best jurors are people who say I could never kill another human. So that's, look, I don't know if there's a way to avoid that. I guess you could bring in separate juries.
Tap screen, please.
What would be a federal charge? Mangione, they charged him murder through stalking.
Right.
Is that something similar?
So the thing is, and I think this could be a problem in the Mangione charge. Stalking doesn't just mean you're stalking, right? Right.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right. It means putting him in reasonable fear. That's exactly right. So I don't know how Brian Thompson, unless there's some evidence I'm not aware of, that Brian Thompson, the person who Luigi Mangione shot, was like, well, he was being stalked.
So, in a little side tangent, there just was a crime con, and we talked about this.
Yeah.
There is an argument that between the first shot and the second shot of Brian Thompson, he knew he was about to be killed.
Wow.
Thank you.
So, this is different. This was one shot in his neck.
Right.
Tap screen. Share the live.
Other possible federal hooks we could say. It depends if the gun was possessed legally or not. If the gun was a sawed-off, if the gun had a defaced serial number, which happens quite a bit, Then it becomes illegal. If he was a felon, this person, a prior felon, there are various ways that this person becomes an illegal possessor, federally illegal possessor of a firearm. In which case, then it will be using that illegally possessed firearm to murder.
Hello.
Details about the firearm are going to matter a lot. That's number one. Number two, if he did it, I'm not seeing another federal crime, but it could be if he did it to advance some other federal crime, or if there was a crossing of state lines involved. It's going to be important where the guy was from, what his path into Utah was. That will determine whether we see federal charges.
What do you make of what this prosecution could potentially look like? And it's a very difficult question that I'm asking you because we don't even know who the suspect is, right? The motivations are. There was reporting about bullets may have had engravings regarding anti-fascist comments or transgender comments. The Wall Street Journal reported that. But you have so many witnesses. Well, maybe witnesses to at least the crime, not necessarily the shooter. So much different camera footage. As a prosecutor, I mean, how would you even begin to process a case like this and try to find relevant evidence to prosecute?
It strikes me as most likely to be an identity type defense, right? I mean, once you conclude it's him, I can't imagine what the defense would be. And yet, you have to look. You need your surveillance video, but surveillance videos, we've seen it already. It could be any number of people, but it's going to be those forensics. It's going to be the ballistic matches, between the rifle and their shell casings. If they're able to recover any fragments, if there's one slug it's probably not going to be testable in any way. It probably shattered, into too many pieces. But ballistics, if you can tie that gun to the person, either through prints, through DNA, or even he might have purchased it in his own name. We don't know, or somebody who we can tie to him might have purchased it. So look at the firearm itself. Look at forensics around the scene. If you get that piece of hair fell out, if he's wearing a hat, a glove, something like that, you're going to want to send those to the labs. And then, the visual IDs. Right? If somebody can say...
Thank you.
If it's somebody who knows the person.
Tap screen, please.
I don't know
please
this guy,
tap screen.
That guy. It's better if you go, I know that guy. He's John Smith. He lived on the dorm down the hall from me. Then your ID issues are much cleaner.
By the way, just going back for a second, is there any charge that you've seen if it's a political assassination?
So there are terrorism charges in a lot of state systems. If your motivation was to try to influence or terrify the public and public policy, right? Which could, but the thing to keep in mind, federally, this is a bizarre wrinkle, but federal law has a definition of domestic terrorism, which this seems to satisfy to me. It's that basically you commit an act because you're trying to influence or intimidate public policy and all that. The problem is there's no crime that goes with it. It's just the definition floating nowhere. There's no federal crime. It sounds crazy. There's no federal crime of domestic terrorism. You can Google it. You'll find a statute that says domestic terrorism is ABC, but there's not a crime that goes with it. So you're going to have to use one of those gun crimes. I think they're state crimes if you want a federal hook.
By the way, this collection of evidence, you mentioned it before, right? So the firearm, the palm prints, the forearm prints, the shoe impressions, the surveillance footage. What are the legal issues that prosecutors face to make sure that evidence is collected properly, that it is not contaminated in any way, but also that it can be properly introduced as evidence at a trial?
Yeah, so number one is you have to maintain the authenticity, the security, and the chain of custody of it, right? You can't just have law enforcement officers kicking it around. You have to make sure whoever finds a piece of evidence, preserves it as is, photographically, video now, takes it into custody without contaminating it, right, with the proper precautions. And, this is like nuts and bolts stuff, but it's important, right? Seals it off, signs the bag.
Tap screen, please. Tap screen, please.
They're going to transfer custody
tap
from
screen.
the Utah State Police over to the FBI. That has to be documented. You have to be able to take every piece of evidence and trace it from the courtroom back to the ground or the roof where it was found, right? You have to make sure that's all locked in. You also want to make sure that everything that is seized constitutionally. So let's say, for example, they get an address on this guy. You want to have a warrant. I guarantee you they already have a warrant mostly written out, a search warrant written out.
Yeah.
Because there's some argument that you could go into an apartment, let's say you get an address of an apartment, then you could go in on some sort of exception, emergency, exigency, whatever. But why risk it? You will have a judge. If I'm prosecuting this case, I will have the on-duty judge. I will have his number ready. He will know that I might call him at any moment. And I have every piece of that warrant written except for, just whatever I need to fill in, right? But I would have the basics already laid out, on September, whatever it was, 11th, September 10th, at whatever time this happened. I would have it all, it would be in a document. ready to just fill in when I need it, and you get a warrant. You better cross your T's, dot your I's, belt and suspenders, every one of those.
Tap screen, please tap screen, tap screen.
They did something and it was violated the Fourth Amendment. If they did a search that was unlawful and lost a piece of evidence, if they interrogated him in a way that violated his Fifth Amendment rights, it would be disastrous.
That's why I always say these very high-profile cases, and particularly in cases where there's so much evidence against a criminal defendant, it may take a little extra time. And I always say, for those crimes, like the ones that are the most high-profile, you have to be even more careful. Prosecutors have to ensure that they are doing everything they're supposed to do, because the worst thing that would happen, right, is let's say they get a conviction, it's overturned, or case is thrown out. I mean, what do you say to the victim's family?
It happens. It happens sometimes. People lose cases on those technicalities.
It should be in every case, but particularly high profile.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you have to make sure that you are completely buttoned up, and again,
exactly.
Side of safety, do the right thing. And by the way, while we're at it, may I criticize Cash Patel for a moment?
I was going to ask you about that. So there was a lot of confusion, I think, is the best way to say it, because there was reporting about a person of interest who had been identified, right? That's what we're talking about, this photo. There was talk about a subject being taken into custody and released after interrogation. That's what FBI Director Cash Patel had mentioned. There is a distinction between person of interest and subject and suspect. I mean, the communication through X yesterday seemed to suggest they got the killer.
I saw it, and I think whoever I was with, I don't want to say, but whoever I was with, I just went, oh my God, good.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and then however many minutes later, whoops, you cannot. What was that? Well, it was an F-up. It was an amateurism. There is an obligation in a case like this to keep the media, the public informed, right? People recognize that, whether it's the governor or the state police, the superintendent, whatever, you do have an obligation to keep us updated. But you can't get out ahead of yourself like that. That is the nightmare scenario where you basically tell people we got the guy, and then you did it. Like, that is just, look, Cash Patel, it's a rookie move by Cash Patel. He's never worked in law enforcement. I think he was maybe a local prosecutor or defender or something.
But wasn't the message interesting? It was not like we have the killer or we have the suspect, we have the subject.
Yeah, but right. Subject is a technical term to some extent. I mean, it usually means, in DOJ, federally, but Cash Patel is federal, it means a person who we are potentially going to indict. It's like target, subject, and then just witness. So it's that middle class. But you can't even put something like, nobody in the general public is going to make that distinction. You just can't say anything until you know you have the guy.
You cover these cases all the time. You feel confident that they are going to find the suspected shooter, because $100,000 reward.
I do think they're going to find him, and here's why. So yesterday when this happened, I said there's three things. They need at least one, and hopefully all three of them in order to get this guy. Gun stuff, gun, ammo, shell casings, anything like that.
Yeah.
So ballistics is number one, vehicle is number two, I don't think they have that yet, and an image is number three. So they have ballistics and they have an image. They have to know who this guy is. I'm sure they know who he is. I'm sure they're at his home. I'm sure they're at his, if he's a college student, as we've seen some reporting, at his dorm. I'm sure they're talking to everybody who knows him. I think given those two things, they will almost certainly find him. But I was nervous because there's a scenario where they don't have, look, it's one shot probably. If he scoops up his spent shell casing, gets out of there, takes the firearm with him, let's say they don't have a surveillance, they don't know what vehicle, maybe he doesn't use it, maybe he runs somewhere. Like, there's a way this could drag out, and it still might, but I think because they have imagery and ballistics, they have to know his name, and they have
movements, and now they put out that picture of the potential person of interest. Okay, that's the criminal side. Real quickly, I want to ask you about a civil side. Why? I'm curious about civil liability. According to NBC, Utah Valley University Police Chief Jeff Long indicated that there were only 6 police officers at this Charlie Kirk speaking event.
Why is it only 6?
And indicated that, quote, there were some plainclothes.
You should have had more.
Well, we train for these things, and you think you have things covered, and these things, unfortunately, they happen. You try to get your bases covered, and unfortunately, today we didn't. Because of that, we had this tragic incident. Now, apparently, Charlie Kirk did have his own security team, and there was coordination between Long and Kirk's team leader. But, I mean, I do have to ask, is the university potentially legally liable in a wrongful death, a negligent suit? Because, Ellie, let me just couple this with one more thing. There has been reporting that the security there may have been lax. You had an attendee named Tyler McGettigan who told NBC News he was surprised that he wasn't asked to go through security to get in. That while you needed a ticket for the event, He said he didn't need it to get to the actual area where Charlie Kirk was speaking. Quote, no one checked the barcode or the QR code. There was no checkpoint to get in. It was literally anyone could walk in if they wanted. There's other reports that there were no metal detectors posted outside of the event. So let's start right there. If that is true, and that was what was going on, does the university suffer any kind of liability?
So it's interesting. At first, we were talking about the local police department. You're not going to be able to sue a police department for negligence, right? There's civil immunity, all that. The university could, for sure, for negligence, for failure to take due care. One complicating factor, though, is the university will probably argue none of that mattered. There's no but for. If the guy was a shooter outside whatever the perimeter was, 200 yards away, whether they check codes or for the actual crowd, doesn't end up leading to this actual killing. There might be an argument, though, that they were negligent in not setting up a broader perimeter. And however this kid gets up to the roof, we don't know that. So, yeah, I mean, look, it wouldn't at all shock me to see lawsuits. People could bring lawsuits against the university for negligence, for wrongful death, even perhaps for some of the bystanders for infliction of emotional distress.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
There is one thing for us to see those videos, but to be in that crowd, to see it, and then flee for their lives, not knowing what was going to happen.
Right.
Do any of those people have a legitimate, valid legal claim for, let's say, intentional or negligent infliction of emotional?
Right. It would have to be negligent. Presumably, nobody intended for this to happen. But yeah, I think we could see that. We could see a class action. We could see a group bonding together. A lot of times these cases just end up settling out. I mean, if you're a university, you're going to go to trial. You know what I mean, against these people who are in attendance. So there are some important civil cases that could come out of this as well. Obviously, the criminal is first and foremost in mind, and I don't know, let's just pray they get this kid quick. I keep calling him kid, he looks young, but this guy quickly.
Well, they said that this person was able to ingratiate themselves into the college community pretty easily. Listen, Ellie Honig, thank you so much for coming on. I kind of want you to
And that's it for the update. See y'all later. Peace.
Regardless of the book, I promise, it's a blast.
But it is great. I started reading it. It's a really, really good read.